Now, many Protestants, as well as numerous individuals who have defended the Catholic Church's teaching on Mary, are aware of this fact. That is, that the verb charito is only used twice in the entire New Testament, in Ephesians 1:6 by means of the word ekeratosen, and in Luke 1:28 in reference to Mary by means of the word kekeratomene. However, the Protestants actually think this fact militates against Catholic teaching on Mary's sinlessness and her Immaculate Conception. Many of them use the connection between Ephesians 1:6 and Luke 1:28 as a primary component of their argument against Catholic teaching on Mary. They claim that charito, the verb we've been discussing, can't signify that Mary was sinless and or without original sin in Luke 1:28, because the same verb is applied to all true believers in Christ in Ephesians 1:6. For example, Protestant Eric Svensson, whose attacks on Catholic teaching have been widely circulated, argued the following, discussing the verb charito and its use in Luke 1:28. Quote, "It, charito, also occurs in Ephesians 1:6 where it is applied to all believers. As even McHugh grants, there is no doubt that Luke uses the word in the same sense as the author of Ephesians. Are we to conclude on this basis that all believers are without original sin?" End quote. Protestant James White, citing Svensson's argument, contended in a similar fashion, quote, "Does the root term carry the meaning of sinlessness? No, it does not. Svensson notes Ephesians 1:6, as I did, which is the only other usage of the verb charito in the New Testament. No serious investigation of the meaning of kekeratomene could possibly ignore or downplay the only other use of the term in the New Testament." End quote. Numerous other Protestants, including Norman Geisler and Ralph Mackenzie, Elliot Miller and Kenneth Samples, and others, have argued in a similar fashion. They presuppose that the use of charito in Luke 1:28 in reference to Mary should be understood according to the verb's only other use in the New Testament, in Ephesians 1:6. Keep that in mind. Now, when confronted with this line of argumentation, numerous supporters of the Catholic position on Mary, at least those who have heard of this Protestant argument, have typically backed away from Ephesians 1:6 and its connection to Luke 1:28. They apparently were persuaded by the Protestants' assertion that if the verb charito in Luke 1:28 is to be understood in the same way as its only other use in the New Testament, Ephesians 1:6, that would make Mary just like any other believer. So they have argued instead that charito, the verb we've been discussing, has a meaning in Luke 1:28 in the perfect passive participle form that's different from the meaning it carries in Ephesians 1:6 in the aorist form. But while many of them have made numerous excellent points about biblical teaching on Mary, this response or approach to the argument is not correct. It represents a significant opportunity that has been missed. That's because when the Protestants, such as those we've just cited, argue that the verb charito in Luke 1:28 is to be understood in the same way as it's used in Ephesians 1:6, they are actually proving that Mary was free from all sin, original and actual, before the birth of Jesus Christ, when the angel greeted her in Luke 1:28. That's because, as we've shown, Protestant scholars who have carefully examined Ephesians 1:5-7 and written formal exegetical commentaries specifically on the book of Ephesians admit, as the context of the passage clearly shows, that the verb charito in Ephesians 1:6 refers specifically to the act by which God applies the benefits of New Testament redemption to an individual and rescues a person from all his sins, original and actual. The person who has received that act of grace is not guilty of original sin. That act of salvation, in which the believer is graced with the benefits of the redemption and forgiven all his sins, is connected to the grace of regeneration or being born again. Concerning the effect of regeneration, which is also called the new birth or being born again, it means that when Protestants argue and teach that kekeratomene in Luke 1:28, however they want to translate it, but a literal translation would be, O graced one, should be understood in the same way as ekeratosen in Ephesians 1:6, he graced, the only other use of charito in the New Testament. They are proving that when the angel greeted Mary and said, Hail, O graced one, he was declaring that Mary was already in a state in which she had no transgressions, original or actual. She was already in a state in which the benefits of New Testament redemption had been applied to her, exactly as the Catholic Church teaches. She was already in a state that's equivalent to regeneration. The angel found Mary in that grace state before the conception of Jesus Christ's humanity in her womb. Moreover, in Ephesians 1:4, which is found in the very context of Ephesians 1:5-7 and also describes the effect of the Ephesians 1:6 act of grace, we read that God, quote, chose us in him before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and blameless before him, end quote. The word in the Greek for blameless is amomus, A plural form of the adjective amomos. According to the lexicon BDAG, amomos means being without fault and therefore morally blameless. The effect of the Ephesians 1:6 act of grace is that one is rendered blameless or without fault. That further refutes Protestants who claim that charito doesn't bring about or indicate sinlessness. Yes, it does. The person graced with the benefits of the redemption is regenerated, freed from all sin, and left blameless before him. That's the power of the redemption in Christ Jesus and the efficacy of his grace.